Hey historians, this is Miss V, and now we're getting into lesson 3.2, which is the empires and states of Africa. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here we have a number of different standards, but the biggest one is this one right here, that you can trace the growth of the major sub-Saharan African empires. That is Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and also the Great Zimbabwe. Okay, so that's pretty much what I would like for you to focus on, especially for your project. All right, so these are your vocabulary. Make sure that you pay attention to that and get those on your guided notes. Pay attention to this one on your guided note sheet. It says Bantu, but it actually should say Swahili, which is a language that was formed by combining the Arabic languages from the Arabic traders and the language of the Bantu people of Southern Africa. Okay, so make sure that you make that change. It should say Swahili and not Bantu. All right. Okay. So in Africa, especially West Africa, there were three different empires that arose. The first big empire was Ghana, and it was one of the first great trading states or trading countries in West Africa. They established these elaborate networks of trade that went throughout northern Africa, the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic Caliphates, even all the way to Persia and India. Okay, they participated in a gold for salt exchange. So they had gold, other places had salt, and they would trade those commodities for other things that they needed, and that allowed them to grow to this wealth and power that they had. Okay. Tunka Manin was one of the biggest powerful leaders of the Ghanaian rulers, and he, as you see here, amassed his army to about 200,000 men, which is pretty sizable, and I would say that would be one of the first major military units of the West African empires, right? So that pretty much was Ghana. They were very matrilineal in their society, and had that community of women and children that, and of course the men would hunt and so forth, but they were very matrilineal in their society. Okay. So the Empire of Ghana did decline because there were many wars. They were invaded by the Berbers, which were the northern Arabic tribes, or the northern Arabic empire, and they were invaded and they lost control of that salt trade. So because of that, that's how Ghana was able to, their empire crumbled. Okay, and from that empire came the kingdom or the empire of Mali. Mali is considered the second largest empire at this particular time. There was no empire that was greater at this time, other than some empires of the Islamic Caliphate, of course. But this was the second largest, okay, in the known world at this time, and the second largest empire for the Western empires of Africa. Okay, Sundiata Keita defeated Ghana and took over the salt and gold trade, or the salt and gold mines from Ghana, and then became the king of now what was called Mali. And the Mali Empire, as you see here, took over Ghana, but also extended as far as Timbuktu, Gao, and Jen, okay, which is along the Niger River. Okay. So this is Mansa Musa. Okay, Mansa Musa became the most richest and most powerful of the Mali kings. He supported education, he supported the arts, and under his rule, the city of Timbuktu became this center of intellectual and a learning center, right? He is one of the richest persons in history. He amassed so much wealth. So if you look on your chart, remember what we discussed about Mansa Musa in terms of his wealth. His wealth was amassed, was enormous. Okay, so much so that he had so much wealth that he gave it away and caused the price of gold to fall. Okay, because he had so much wealth and so much gold that he gave it away. Okay, so again, Mansa Musa was one of those rulers that helped to bring Mali to its zenith, and also become one of the richest of these West African empires. Okay. Now, Mali declined because of internal issues. There was a civil war, and they were trying to figure out what's happening in terms after Mansa Musa died. Mansa Musa was the grandson of Sundiata Keita, okay, who was the first ruler. But after Mansa Musa passed, and now there is no successor after his rule, now there's disputes and so forth. So because of that, internally, the Mali Empire crumbled and fell to the Songhai Empire. Okay, so the Songhai Empire was even larger than the Mali Empire. So this was the largest of the West African empires. Okay, and Songhai, they benefited from the Muslim trades, which linked them throughout northern Africa, West Africa, and parts of Arabia. So that Arabia, we're talking about the Arabian Peninsula, which is Persia, those areas that we talked about with Jerusalem and Syria, Saudi Arabia, and all of those areas. Okay. So Sunni Ali was the first of the rulers for Songhai, and he was a very skilled soldier, a very skilled administrator, and he helped to unite the empire so that it becomes stronger and it became powerful. And he took the rural and the city dwellers and brought them under a single government. Okay, and Mohammed Touré overthrew Sunni Ali's son. Okay, and he was a devout Muslim, and he created the Askia dynasty. So again, on your chart, we mentioned Askia the Great. This is Askia the Great. Okay, Askia the Great is Mohammed Touré, and under Mohammed Touré, or Askia the Great, he was able to bring Songhai to its power and its zenith under his leadership. Okay, and this is a picture of Mohammed Touré's tomb in Mali. So Songhai declined because of there were so many ethnic groups, and here's one thing to note. Okay, there are different ethnic groups within these empires that we're talking about. Okay, so that's there's different tribal areas. So they're just because they were in this area of Songhai or Mali, there are different ethnic groups or different tribes of those areas that were all in this big empire. Okay, so because of these different ethnic groups fighting amongst themselves, they were open to outside forces, and a Moroccan army was able to come in and defeat the Songhai troops, even though that they had a very strong and was one of the first actual professional. They had the actual first professional military, right? Even though they had that first professional military, the Moroccan army was able to provide or have firearms and defeat the Songhai troops, and that ended the empire in Songhai. Okay. All right. So there were societies in East Africa, and those families, and remember I just mentioned these ethnic groups. One of those ethnic groups were the Bantu. Okay, And the Bantu people started to migrate from West Africa and they moved to the East African region along the Niger River. So they went from the Niger River and moved eastward. And they spread their knowledge of iron smelting and other crops. They took that knowledge with them. So when they took that knowledge with them, East Africa started to become a trade center as well. Okay, and they started to develop other societies and other empires such as Mogadishu, Mombasa, Kilwa, and other trading centers. Okay, a lot of that area was called the Aksum Empire, or the Kingdom of Aksum. Okay, and as time passed, those people in the areas, the Bantu mixed with the African Arab culture, or the African Arab traders, and now that mixture of the language created a new language called Swahili. Okay, so Swahili is a mixture of Arabic and Bantu. All right, so just keep that in mind. And this is Ibn Battuta. He was a famous Islamic scholar that traveled all over Western Africa and Eastern Africa. And he came up to Kilwa, which was one of the Eastern African trading centers, and named it as one of the most beautiful, well-built cities in the world. Okay. Alright, so these were societies in South Africa, and many of the societies in South Africa were formed very slowly. And not much is known about these societies because of how slowly they were built. And also, we're still archaeologists, historians are still uncovering a lot of about them. However, what we do know is that they lived in stateless societies. And stateless societies are independent villages or communities that were organized by a chieftain or a clan head. It wasn't necessarily per se a organized king and queen and court, but they were different clans, okay, and they had a chief to rule over them or to govern them per se. All right, and one of those places was Great Zimbabwe. Great Zimbabwe reached a height of wealth, just like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, because of trade. Okay, they were able to benefit from the trade on the East Coast with the Aksum Empire, and Mogadishu and Kilwa and so forth. And they would trade things like gold, sometimes copper, and other different or natural resources. Okay, they are well known for the Great Enclosure. And the Great Enclosure is this large encompassing space that is thick walls that's about 32 feet high. Okay, they don't know what it was for. They suspect that it was some type of fortress for the king, but they don't know. Okay, as a matter of fact, they still don't know what the purpose is for, but before in history they had some shrouded idea and kind of hid it in history books to say that it wasn't indigenous people that created it, but it was actually Ethiopians or Phoenicians. But as time went on, they corrected the history books to really reflect that it was African indigenous people that created this oval space called the Great Enclosure. Okay. They also don't know what happened to this particular empire because they noticed that there was no outside forces that came to harm it. They suspect that many of the population moved out because the population grew so fast that they ran out of supplies or ran out of food and water and so forth. So that's the reason why they're thinking that, but it's not necessarily in cement, but because they know based on primary sources that and archaeological digs that it wasn't outside forces that allowed this empire to fall. All right. So hopefully that is a good look at these African kingdoms. As you see here, this is the Great Enclosure. It may not look big from this region, but if you see here, this is quite a tall structure. And a lot of the structure was completed, these stones were laid without mortar. So imagine laying a brick by brick and there's no mortar, or there's no sticky stuff, or what things, what you would call mortar, to have it stick together so that they could be fortified. Still standing today, right? So this is something that baffles archaeologists in terms of how these people were able to build such a structure at this time. All right, so awesome. Thanks for tuning in. This was pretty much all of 3.2, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.